Okay, Algebra 2. Day 8 is all about the sine and cosine graph. From the notes, there's a bunch of things to keep track of. This is kind of just getting you introduced to everything here. It's good to know where all this comes from. You could stick it in a calculator. Doesn't give you much though, that you guys know of yet. If you just graph them, make sure you're in radian mode. Alright, you get a bunch of waves on the graph. If you try to look at the table, doesn't help you much. You have to adjust things. We'll get to the calculator later on. Let's try to understand it without the calculator first though. So some things you should know. Back to the basics. The unit circle we did before. Alright, unit circle, radius is 1. You got different degree amounts all the way around the circle. All of this graphing though, most of it is in radians. So 0 degrees, 360 always starts here, right? 90 degrees, that's the same as pi over 2 in radians. 180 is the same as pi. All right, 270 should be 3 pi over 2. 360, that's the same as 2 pi in radians. Remember, every point on the unit circle is a cosine theta, sine theta coordinate. X coordinate is cosine, your y coordinate is the sine. All of the graphs, let's do cosine first, I guess. All right, we're going to try to graph like y equals cosine x, or cosine theta, whatever you want to call it. All right, we'll start with 0. You're going to see everything in radians, so I'm going to label this pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2, and 2 pi. All right, some of the stuff you get used to more and more. It takes a little bit of practice. Everything you see going on the unit circle is essentially what we're going to graph up here. All right, so if everything we're graphing is the cosine of any angle, we're looking at the x-coordinates of any angle. So at 0, what's the x-coordinate? Well, the x-coordinate is 1. So at 0, if you want to label your y-axis, let's say there's 1, there's -1. Our x-coordinate at 0 degrees, or 0 radians, is 1. So actually there's your first point on the graph. Go to pi over 2, or 90 degrees. What's the x-coordinate there? 0. So the height on the graph is 0. What's the height at pi? Well, now you're here, you're at -1. Right, your x-coordinate is -1. 3 pi over 2 is 270. The x-coordinate there is back to 0. X-coordinate at 2 pi is back to +1. Alright, doesn't look like much now. This is a sine or a cosine curve though, remember? So it's not a V, it's actually a curve. Connect your dots. Rough sketch, good enough for now. Alright, what you just do is, this is one cycle of the cosine graph. Alright, because if it keeps going, it's the same picture over and over. Alright, because you're going around and around the circle, that's all it is. There's cosine. Let's do sine real quick. Y equals sine of theta, let's put it down here. Well, sine of theta, that's the y coordinate of any point on my unit circle. So let's start at 0 again. Alright, 0, 90, 180, 270, and 360, all in radians. What's my y coordinate at 0? That's 0. So sine starts at 0. What's my y coordinate at 90? It's 1. So again, label your y's. So now my graph goes up to 1. My y coordinate at pi is -1. I'm sorry, back to 0. Y coordinate at 270 is -1. And my y coordinate at 360 is back to 0. So there's your sine curve. Not drawn to scale, but close enough. Alright, your calculator would give you that, but it's good to know where it comes from. Alright, if you know those, the two basic ones, pretty much everything all about this graphing trick stuff is all based off of those two. It goes back to those transformation rules we did back a few chapters ago. All right, you'll see more of that. If you look at the front of the notes, that's pretty much all it is. It talks about domain and range, the review, stuff like that. All right, the period is one of those key vocab terms for this whole unit. The period is the length of one cycle. So this is one complete cycle from where you started with all the way up, down, back to where you started. That is the one full cycle. So the period is one full cycle. All right, it's the length of it. All right, so I'm gonna put that in there. The length of one full cycle. All right, notice the sine cycle is a little bit different than the cosine. All right, still one full cycle though, from top all the way down, all the way back up. That's one full cycle. All right, so for these two, the period would be 2 pi. That is the length of that full cycle. Some things on there on the back of the day 8 notes, if you have the notes. The next thing, we're gonna start to change some things. All right, instead of just y equals cosine of x, you maybe want to stick a number in there, like y equals 3 cosine of x. That's one of them in the notes. All right, going back to those transformation rules, numbers out in front, those are vertical stretches. It's going to stretch all of your y coordinates, right? The vertical coordinate. So instead of going to 1, it would go to 3, all right? Instead of -1, it would go to -3. That's all it is. We'll just multiply with the y coordinates, all right? So this is the amplitude. You'll see that if you look at the notes as well.